Hello, welcome back to my vlog channel. Today's video is going to be another one in my money management series. I'll link the playlist up here if you haven't seen it before. Today we're going to talk about saving money. Specifically ways that I save money or ways that I think that I can save more money. I want to preface this by saying like everyone has one or two things that they really enjoy spending money on that bring them a lot of joy. So I'm not saying that you need to cut out every single thing from your life that I'm about to mention, or like every single thing that's not completely essential to your life. I think it is important, if you can afford it, to keep one or two things that do make you happy, that you allow yourself to spend money on. But these are just some general ideas on maybe ways that you hadn't thought of that you could cut down your spending. Some of them really don't impact your life particularly much either, so some of them are really easy to do. So I hope you find this video helpful, and let's get started. The main category I would say that kind of eats up a lot of your money that's not completely necessary is food. Now obviously food is necessary, but I think there's a lot of things that we do either subconsciously or we just don't realize that there are cheaper ways of doing things. So first of all is to cook at home. I've written down here no restaurants, cafes, coffees, bought lunches. Now obviously you can eat out sometimes. I eat out sometimes. I think everybody does. But what I mean is just to cook at home as much as you can, because it is definitely cheaper than buying your food out. Restaurants cost a lot of money. So if you're going out for dinner like once or twice a week, that is a lot of money that you could be saving by cooking at home. Think of your brunch date. If you're out for brunch like every weekend day, then that's also a lot of money you're going to be spending. And also your morning coffee. If you're having a bought coffee every single morning, that is going to add up as well. Also buying your lunch every day is going to add up very quickly. When Jonathan and I do the grocery shop, we include food that we're going to be preparing for our lunches during the week. Whether that is a single prep on a Sunday and you get your lunch ready for the whole week, or you get it ready each morning before you go to work, it's still going to be a lot cheaper than buying it every day. The second thing with food is that meat is expensive. So what Jonathan and I have chosen to do, we're not vegetarian, but we have chosen to eat less meat. Usually we will aim to make one dinner a week with meat in it, and the rest of our dinners will be vegetarian. Sometimes we have more meat, sometimes we have no meat for the week, but if you are currently cooking meat for every single dinner that you make, then you could probably save a lot of money by cutting down on the amount of meat that you eat. Something that Jonathan and I have done a little bit over the last couple of years is to price our meals that we're making at home. We don't do it as much this year because we're not on as much of a tight budget, but like last year Jonathan was studying, so we were only on one income. So what we would do is keep our receipt after each grocery shop and go through all of the items in each meal and price up how much that meal cost, and then we would actually write it in the recipe book itself, so that when we were flicking through the recipe book we could see which meals were the most cost effective. So for example, if the ingredients for a meal cost us $10 but it made 4 servings, then we would do 10 divided by 4, $2.50, and that is the cost per serve. So every time someone eats a serving of that meal, it costs $2.50. So sometimes a meal seems more expensive, but it also makes more servings. So by breaking it down to cost per serve, you know actually what the value for your money is. This is one where if you are on a really tight budget and you need to be making your meals as cheap as possible, this one is really good. However, if you want to be eating like a variety of food and really enjoying your meals, then this one might kind of break your soul a little bit. Next tip is to drink less or don't drink, and I'm talking about alcohol here, not water. Alcohol is really expensive. Jonathan and I don't actually drink at all. We haven't in years. But if you do enjoy drinking, I would recommend just like cutting down the amount that you drink, just so that you're saving a bit more money, because yeah, that's a big expense for a lot of people. Related to this is just drink water. Water is practically free and it's so good for your health. So if you're currently spending lots of money on coffee or fizzy drinks or juice or literally any drink other than water and you're trying to save money, maybe just swap it for water. Another thing we try and do where possible is buy food in bulk. Now obviously you can only do this for food that's not going to go off, but things like rice and flour and all those staples that tend to last quite a long time, we buy those in bulk and it saves us money in the long run. We usually buy a huge bag of rice. I can't remember if it's 5 kg or 10 kg, but whichever it is, it lasts us like 6 months. Other things we do this with are dishwasher tablets. We actually buy a year's supply of dishwasher tablets in one go. And also washing powder, we just get like the biggest one that we can find, and that also lasts us a year. Always meal plan. I know so many people that are driving to the supermarket like every day after work because they need to pick up things for dinner. We go to the supermarket once a week. Before we go, we know what meals we're cooking for the week. We know what all the ingredients that we need for those meals are. We know what we're going to have for lunch and for breakfast, and we make sure we've got it all on one list so that we make one trip to the supermarket and that is it. If you're going to the supermarket with no plan of what you're making for dinner, then you're just going to be buying random veggies, and it means that at the end of the week you won't have used everything because there won't have been a plan for you to follow. And even if you're only throwing out a little bit of food, it's still food that you've spent money on and not got any value from at all. So definitely go with a plan so that you know you're going to be using all of your food at the end of the week and not wasting that money. We're still going with the food category. I told you there were lots of saving tips here. So the next one is to buy seasonal fruit and vegetables. Fruit and veggies vary in price as they come in and out of season. So avocados, for example, are way cheaper in summer than they are the rest of the year. They're also like just nicer because that's when they're in season. So I will only buy avocados in summer. I don't waste my money the rest of the year because they're just so expensive, and you also never know if it's going to be a good one or not. Same with like berries and peaches, all those sort of things that I will only buy in summer. And then there's different fruits that are great in winter, like oranges and mandarins are beautiful in winter. Try changing supermarkets. I changed which supermarket I go to last year, and now I spend like $10 to $20 less every shop. If you're in New Zealand, Pack and Save is the cheapest supermarket. So I used to go to Countdown, and I've swapped now to Pack and Save, which is what is saving me money on my grocery shop. But they don't always do great produce. Sometimes you'll buy fruit or veggie that looks fine on the outside and then you'll cut into it and it'll just be disgusting. So what I would recommend is doing the majority of your shop at Pack and Save and then going somewhere else for your fruit and veggies, whether that's an actual veggie store or just a different supermarket. If you're overseas, I'm not sure what the cheapest supermarkets are, but just looking into which ones are going to give you the best value for money. And lastly, on the food category, I just want to compare two different breakfasts that I kind of alternate between, but one of them is a lot cheaper than the other. So quite often for breakfast, I will make a smoothie with like banana and frozen berries and whatever I feel like putting in. Generally, that is my summer breakfast, and then in the colder months, I make porridge, which is literally just oats, water, and then I add some milk at the end. There's a big difference in the price between a smoothie and a bowl of porridge. Maybe not noticeable for a week, but over time, porridge is so much cheaper than a smoothie. A bag of frozen berries is like $8, and that lasts me up to 2 weeks, and that's not even the rest of the ingredients that are going in my smoothie. That's just one of the ingredients, whereas for porridge, the only things that I'm buying are milk and oats. I mean, milk is a staple anyway, and I put so little of it in my porridge that it kind of doesn't add up to anything. So it's mostly just oats. I can buy a huge bag of oats for $5, and that probably lasts me about a month. It's just something to keep in mind. Like if you have two breakfasts that you really like, or two of anything that you really like, but one is significantly cheaper than the other, and you're trying to save money, then that's the one to go for. Okay, let's get off the food category. The next category I've called social, because socializing can get expensive. So the first thing on my list is to socialize at people's homes, whether it's your home or your friends' homes. By doing this, you're avoiding costs like the eating out costs that we talked about earlier, and also like movie costs, because going out to the movies is quite expensive, but watching a movie on Netflix costs you nothing more than what you've already spent on Netflix. I really enjoy cooking for people, so I enjoy having people come over for dinner that I get to make for them. Even if everyone brings one thing, if you're having like your friends round or your family around, if everyone brings one thing to eat, then everyone gets a good meal, but you've also only had to provide one thing, as opposed to going out and ordering food. You'd be spending a lot more money than just having to buy the ingredients for one thing. The other thing I wrote down for social was to choose a cheaper phone plan. So looking for one that maybe has less data and trying to limit your internet use to when you're home so that you can be using Wi-Fi, and then just saving your data for when it's really important. Like I generally just use my data if I'm going somewhere new, so I use it for Google Maps. But if it's like Facebook or any social media, I'll wait till I'm home so that I'm not using my data for that. And by doing that, you're not going to need a plan that has a lot of data, because it is the data usually that costs a lot of money with phone plans. So the next category is home, and there's a lot of ways that you can save like little bits of money at home. None of these are massive savers, but they're all going to add up. And if you can just kind of get into a mindset of just being a little more conscious of your usage, it will add up over time, as with a lot of these things that we're talking about. So the first one is to mind your water usage. Now, I've seen some people's like day in my life vlogs, and they show themselves doing the dishes and they completely fill the sink right up to the top to do their dishes. You don't need to do that. You only need to fill the sink like maybe halfway, and then you've like half the amount of water that you're using. I would never have thought to say this if I hadn't seen it in someone's vlog, because I assume that everyone washes dishes the same way, but obviously we don't. Also, do actually put the plug in the sink when you're doing dishes, because I know some people just run the water constantly and just kind of wipe things under running water, but then you're going to be using more water than if you just put the plug in and use what's there. Electricity as well, so rather than using heaters all the time, try and use a blanket when you can. Turn your lights off, turn your computer off. Try not to use the dryer as much, because that uses a lot of electricity. I will only use the dryer if it's like pouring with rain and I need the thing back straight away. So if it's like sheets, where we have 2 sets of sheets, then I'll just leave it for the week, because I don't need the wet set of sheet backs, because I've got another set that I can use in the meantime. Same with towels, like we have more than 2 towels in the house, so I don't need those back straight away. So try not to use the dryer. Towel rails as well, so if you have heated towel rails, maybe you can turn them off in summer when it's quite hot. And also fans, like try and just open doors, open windows rather than having the fans going. Have a think about your TV plan. This is actually something I need to do. I've got in brackets here, change to lower Netflix plan, because when we got Netflix, we were living with more people in the house. So we got the plan where you could play Netflix from 2 different devices, playing 2 different things at the same time, which I think was great when we got it. But now that it's just Jonathan and I in the house, we pretty much are only ever watching Netflix together. In the 2 years that it's been just the 2 of us, there has never been a time that we've been watching 2 different things on 2 different devices on Netflix. So we need to go down a plan, because that will save us like, I think, $3 or $4 a month, which again sounds like not a lot, but it's now been 2 years of us paying a higher amount than we need to. So we need to just put it down to the lower one. Also, if you have more than one TV plan, I highly encourage you to think about whether that is giving you value for money. There's like one thing that I want to watch on Disney Plus, and it's not worth me getting Disney Plus just for one thing. So yeah. The next thing on my list is make less rubbish, because you do actually pay for your rubbish to be collected. Obviously you do pay for your recycling as well, but that is included in rates, so the amount that you pay isn't able to change, whereas your rubbish, you only pay when you put it out. So anything that can be recycled should be going in the recycling bin, since that is already paid for in your rates. Any soft plastics can be taken back to the supermarket. I know Countdown has a bin outside most of their stores that collects soft plastic, and that is free. So soft plastics should not be going in your rubbish. We have made so little rubbish since we started recycling our soft plastics, and that can be a whole bunch of things, like chip packets. I know they look like they're more of a tinfoil-y material on the inside, but they can be recycled as soft plastics. The best way I've heard it described is like any plastic that you can scrunch in your hand can be recycled. And also just thinking about the things that you're purchasing and making sure there's not a huge amount of wastage or like rubbish that you're purchasing with the items that you want. A good example of this would be the plastic bags that you put your fruit and veggie in at the grocery store. I actually have some little reusable bags that I take to the grocery store with me every week and put my fruit and veggies in, so that I'm not getting those plastic bags and throwing them out every week. Always have your washing machine set to go on a cold setting, because if you're using heat, then you're wasting power to heat the water up. Your clothes do not need to be washed in hot water unless it specifies on the label. Like 90% of clothes are perfectly fine to go through a cold wash. And with that, also just wash all your clothes together. It doesn't matter about the color. The only time something colorful needs to be separated is if it's having its very first wash. So if you bought a bright red t-shirt and you're putting it through the wash for the first time, don't put that one in with your white things, but once it's been washed once, it is then fine to go through with everything else. The reason I've got this on my list is because I've heard of so many people that do a white swash and then they do a black swash and then they do a color wash. And you really don't have to. You are wasting so much water and so much power by doing 3 separate washes for things that can literally all go in the same wash. This will also save you time as well, because like, who wants to sit there going through dirty laundry and categorizing it by color? Ugh. The next category I've called general. So I guess this is just things that I wasn't sure where else to categorize. The first one is to pay for things annually. So I'm thinking things like your car registration, insurances, gym, things like that. Usually if you pay for things annually rather than monthly or weekly, it will cost you less in the long run. Obviously not everyone is in a situation where they can afford to pay for a year's worth of something all in one go, but if you are, it's usually quite a bit cheaper than paying it bit by bit. When it comes to your birthday or Christmas or any time where people are likely to give you a gift, ask for something that's actually useful. If you're just like, I don't know what I want, then people are gonna get you random things that you probably don't want. But if you ask for something that you're intending to buy anyway, then it's gonna save you money because you now won't have to buy that thing. For example, Ugg boots if it's coming up to winter. So yeah, have a little list of like things that you're planning on buying, and then if it comes up to a gifting occasion, then you can ask the people around you for something that's on your list. Part-time work or getting a second job is also another option for getting a little bit more income. So rather than saving money, this is a tip for actually earning more money so that you can then save it. In the past, I've given music lessons, I've done babysitting, house sitting. Obviously now I do YouTube, which although it's not like a part-time income, it does make me a little bit of money every now and then. Or getting a second job. So depending on your work hours and, you know, if you've got any special skills that you could teach someone else, there are always ways of getting a little bit more money on the side. It just depends if you have the time for it. Another tip, which is always in these how to save money videos, but it is important if you hadn't already thought of it, is to either move home or stay home. If you're already at home and you want to be saving for something big, the fastest way is to not have to be paying rent. So stay at home, because that is going to save you so much money. Even if you are paying rent at home, it's going to be nothing compared to what you'll be paying if you actually go renting. And same thing with if you've already moved out and you're trying to save for something big. If you're able to move home and you're prepared to move home, it'll save you heaps of money. The last tip for this category is don't go to the doctors for silly things. Everywhere I look, there's examples of people just like wasting money on going to the doctors for things that they really don't need to. I'm talking things like a cold. Like, there's nothing a doctor can do for your cold. Your cold will go away on its own. If you need like medicine to kind of clear the congestion and things like that, you can just buy that from the pharmacy. You don't need to go and spend $80 on a doctor's visit to then also go and buy your medicine anyway. You know, like all a doctor is going to do is tell you to go to the pharmacy and buy that medicine. So just go and buy that medicine. You don't need a prescription for that. I know that a doctor's prescription makes the medicine cheaper, but like, if you're only spending $5 on medicine instead of $15 on medicine, but then you've also spent $80 on the doctors themselves, you've spent $85 instead of $15, you know? So it's way cheaper to just not go to the doctor. Obviously if it's serious, go to the doctor, but like if it's something like a cold that you literally know will be gone in a couple of days, you don't need to go. This annoys me so much actually. Like people at school are always like, oh, my kid is sick and I need to take them to the doctor, and I'm like, you don't. You literally don't need to take them to the doctor. They can just sit at home and get better from rest. And also there's an ad out at the moment that's advertising doctors like on your phone that you can see online basically, but the way they advertise it is like, when do doctors become 9 to 5? When Miss Snotty Nose has a cold that works around the clock. And I'm like, if your Miss Snotty Nose has a cold, she doesn't need to go and see a doctor. So anyway, I think that's just one of those things that's like ingrained in our culture, that like if you have a snotty nose or you have a cold, you have to go to the doctor, but you don't. Okay, next category is shopping. So first on the list is makeup, and I've written take stock, will you ever use it up? So look at your collection. How many blushes are in there? How long does it take you to go through one blush? If it takes you 3 years to go through a blush and you have 5 blushes, that is 15 years worth of blush. And blush will go off in 15 years, so you don't need to buy any more right now. So apply that to like every category of makeup. Do you have so much that it's gonna go off before you actually use it up? In which case, don't buy any more. Next in the shopping category is spend within your means. So that is thinking about like not using your credit card, not going into overdraft, no payment plan purchases. So for example, if you can't afford to get whatever you're about to buy and it's like, oh, but you can do afterpay or you can pay for the purchase over the next few weeks, that is a bit of a red flag, because if you can't afford it right now, maybe don't buy it right now, save up until you can afford it, or do you really need it at all? So speaking of debt, I have done a whole video dedicated to how to avoid debt, so I'll link that up here if you haven't seen it yet. I've written nail polish and gel nails. I think what I was meaning by this is that gel nails are cheaper than acrylic nails, and then nail polish is cheaper than both of those. So if you're like getting acrylics and you want to save money, you could go down to gels. If you're getting gels and you want to save money, you could just paint your nails. A few years ago, I actually just stopped doing anything to my nails. I really like how they look, just natural, and they're really healthy now that I'm not putting anything on them. I did like the nice colors and patterns that I was getting with gel nails, but it just wasn't worth the money, and it wasn't worth like the damage that it was causing my nails either. I've written identify and forego luxuries, but this goes back to what I was saying at the start, where like we all have those 1 or 2 things that we love to spend money on. So if I mention one of your things here, then I'm not saying you have to cut it out completely. I'm just saying if you don't feel like you need some of these things, then maybe think about cutting them out. Like for me, it was nails. I completely cut that cost out of my life because although I liked it, it wasn't one of my like things that really brought me joy. Another thing on the list is hair. I do still get my hair cut, but I'm no longer having it colored because that was like doubling the cost of my haircuts. There's always like different amounts that you can spend on these things. So obviously I was spending quite a lot having my hair colored. Now I'm spending a little less because I just get it cut. I could spend even less because I have like a really good hairdresser that I love going to. But if I wanted to spend less on my hair, I could just get it cut at like those really cheap places in the mall. But I'm not prepared to do that because they've stuffed my hair up a few times, and I also just really like my hairdresser. But yeah, definitely another way that you can save money. I've also got on here massage because I know that some people get like a weekly massage, which if you need that and that's your thing, again, like I said, that's great. But if you're getting like a weekly massage or a monthly massage and you think maybe you don't really need it, you could make it more of a treat and just do it on like special occasions, like do it as a birthday treat or like a holiday treat or something like that. The other thing on the shopping list is to claim back work expenses. So if you're shopping with your own money on things that are for your work, like for me, for example, as a teacher, I will sometimes just go out and buy something that I need for my class. For example, the most recent thing I bought for my class was glycerin because we were going to do table bubbles where we like blow bubbles on the table. And so for that we needed dish soap and glycerin. I've got the dish soap, but I don't have glycerin, so I went out and bought that. But that's not something that I need for my life. It's something that is purposely for school. So things like that that are designed for your work and not for you. Just remember to like hand in your receipts and get your workplace to pay you back for those things. Okay, we are on to the last category, which doesn't really have a title, but these are just, I guess, things that didn't fit into any other category. Some of them don't directly give you more money. So the first one is to have a specific goal in mind and a number. So what I would do is have an idea of what you want to save for, whether that is a car, a house, a pet, like whatever it is. Keep the image of that thing in your head or put a picture or like a folder of it on your phone or on your computer so that you know what it is that you're aiming for and saving for. And also with the number, I would have an idea of how much that thing is going to cost in total, so that is like your overall goal, but I would also split it up into chunks so that you can see the progress over time. For example, let's use my student loan as an example. So obviously at some point I would love to pay off my student loan and not have that looming over me. What I've actually done is on a piece of paper I've got a bar going right across the page. At the end I've got the entire amount of my student loan, but then I've like broken that bar up into chunks with the smaller amounts across the top. Say the first chunk is 500, so when I reach 500 I can colour in that section of the bar, and then the next one would be 1,000, then I can colour in the next section of the bar, and then, you know, when the bar is completely coloured in, that means that I've finished, I've done my student loan, it's all paid off. Sometimes I also do tick boxes. I'll have like all of the amounts down the side, starting from the first amount that I want to save and going up in increments, and as I reach each of those numbers I'll just tick the checkbox, and then I can see visually how far through my goal I am. It depends what works for you. Just find something that makes you feel good about making progress. Another suggestion is to take note of all of your spending and to categorize it so you can see where you're spending your money, what you're spending it on, and whether those things are necessary. I have also done a video on this which I will link up here for you. The next tip is to put your money into a savings account because it will gain interest that way rather than just having it in your regular spending account, which A, makes you much more likely to spend it, but B, means that you're not getting any extra interest on that money from the bank. So open a savings account if you don't already have one. Check what your bank's rules are on how you can get the maximum interest. So for the one that I have, if I take money out during the month, then I don't get the bonus interest at the end of the month, but as long as I leave it for the month, then I get bonus interest. And the very last tip is to budget for the worst case scenario. Anticipate that you're going to have higher spending than you actually are. Always have an emergency fund. So make sure you are prepared for the worst case. This doesn't have to be major things. I mean, like for example, with our groceries, I always budget $100 for groceries, but quite often it is like $60 to $80, which means that I've then saved between $20 and $40, but I always budget $100 because it always could be up to $100. So just make sure you've got the money set aside in case it's a little more than you think it's going to be. Same with petrol. I always budget $100 for petrol and it never is more than $80. And we always have an emergency fund as well in case something goes wrong or in case something costs more than we expect it to. So there's always that money that we're able to dip into if we need to. So those are all of my tips on extra ways that you can save money. I'm sure you're doing a lot of these already if you've been trying to save money, but hopefully there were a few things in there that you hadn't thought of before. If you have any other tips, leave them in the comments down below so we can all save a little bit more money this year. But thank you for watching and I will see you again later.